Hey SPI fans, Hank Boomershine here with Chris Sloan. You know, a lot of you think, hey, Chris Sloan's from Ireland, what's he doing here in the United States? But you spend most of your time here in the United States lately.
Yeah.
You just came off tour trials.
Yep, straight from tour trials in Chicago to Sweden to Korea, back to Vegas.
Yeah, we were in Korea together.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And he's here with us at Storm. He's been doing some testing with us. We're dialing him in, getting him ready for next year's tour. Yep. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what keeps him focused during his practice sessions, during his tour trial event. It's got him to the next year's 2025 national tour. So let's dive into what gets him focused for the tour event.
Okay.
Okay, Chris, so practice session's coming up. You got to get started. So what's the first thing you focus on?
The first thing I focus on is trying to get my footwork right, man. And the footwork and like my hips being like in the right position are so important for me, because I feel like if they collapse too early, that my body gets too far forward. So like I really focus on the tempo in like my first couple of steps and trying to stay a little bit taller. So yeah, that's kind of like the first thing that I do, and I spend the first like 20 or 30 minutes of my practices doing this.
Okay, let's take a look at it. Especially being a two-hander, you gotta be careful about that body and position.
Yeah, I can't get forward too quick, especially because I'm not like the tallest guy in the world, so I'll lose energy. So like that's why the hips and getting things forward with my feet are the most important to me.
Okay, let's take a look.
Right. Biggest thing for me is don't collapse my hips in like the third step. Like I'm
yeah, because as that ball passes, the thing that happens is you've got to stay centered. You got to stay over your feet.
Right.
Because if you get in trouble, the moment of truth, you're trying to let go of it, and if you're in a bad position, you're going to lose it.
Plus, if like my footwork is fine in the first couple of steps, it feels like I have as much time as I want, like going into the release point, and I can kind of manipulate it whatever way I need to.
Yeah, and so we see more and more of the kids and the youth and the generations of two-handers. So what would you tell these kids coming up in that, working on getting started and getting into being a two-hander? Would it be footwork? Would it be body position to work on most? I
feel like both those things, like footwork and body position, are definitely like basic fundamentals of, I suppose, any game, but they're really cemented and concreted into the two-handed game because, you know, we get a couple of different body angles comparatively to how the one-handed game is. So sure. I would say that they're the most essential to like success.
So now we got our physical warmed up, ready to go. Now we're gonna play the lane a little bit. Got a 2024 Masters pattern here. You had some pretty good success at this pattern, but there was two different zones to play here, right? Yeah. So in this practice session, how would you attack it?
I suppose after playing on the pattern too, and kind of knowing that there's two different zones that you can can kind of play it like quite up the lane, or you can curve it a little bit, but you can't get all the way over there. So there's like two different angles of attack. So I'd probably chop and change between like the two different sublimes that I have, and I'd see which one I could kind of stay a little bit further right with and roll it a little bit more, versus the one that's a little bit cleaner that I could like curve it with.
Okay, let's take a look at both.
All right.
That's when I was like, oh.
That's a little more forward, less axis rotation. And we saw that on that fresh pattern, that you had to kind of get it up the lane and keep it in front of you. You use a little bit of surface so that we could get it to start, bleed out energy.
Yeah.
And that one matched up really well.
Yeah, so that one, whenever I'm going like a little more up the lane, I like to use a ball a little bit more surface. I like to tumble it a little bit more. I don't want too much axis rotation when I'm playing up the lane with those balls that are a little stronger. And that's the stronger drilled of...
A little higher pin, a little taller pin.
Yeah, exactly. So it's got a little bit more flair to it. So it allows me to control the front to back motion a little bit easier from the right.
So now we're going to go try to play a little bit more left. The other one's got a little bit smoother surface on it, and it's a little bit lower pin. So we're going to, let me see if it rounds the lane a little bit more.
Yeah, okay, cool.
All right. So now we see that zone left. Kind of shaped the lane a little bit, but you still got it to the same, almost the same break point you did from the right.
Yeah, so that was kind of something that I unfortunately didn't do when we bowled in the Masters, and I kind of felt like I couldn't get it to the right, but now after practicing on this pattern for a couple of hours today, I've realized that like it is important to still get it over to the same break point there.
Sure, because we know that once that pattern, we know that there's a break point in that spot. Now we know that with different balls, different layouts, we can kind of still get it to that spot, but maybe from a different angle, different layouts. And the Sublime Focus, we know that we have a little bit of versatility in that ball as well too.
Right.
So it lets us play a couple different angles of attack.
Yeah.
We saw it in Korea. I've seen it a lot of places around the world. I've seen a lot of you guys backing it up from the left. I've seen a lot of the left been really good in a couple different tournaments around the world. I've watched Simo back it up in Korea.
Yeah.
I watched a couple of lefties. You said there was a lefty did it in Europe.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys. Well, there's a lot of guys in Europe doing it now.
Yeah.
It's almost becoming like it's something that I've had to physically.
So you've been practicing that too.
Yeah, I have.
So what's the thought process in the backup?
I am predominantly when I'm backing it up, I'm trying to get it to roll off like my index finger a little bit better. And
Okay.
the main reason for getting over that side is that like at the last couple of events that we've been at, the right hadn't seemed too friendly, and the left seemed easier to combat.
Sure.
And the moves weren't as complicated. At the tour trials, I think it was day 2 or whatever, in one of the centers, I backed it up for one of the blocks and had quite a bit of success.
Sure.
So, but it was something that I kind of learned on the fly with Simo and living around and being around Simo. So it's something now that I'm starting to learn that I have to practice more and more of.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's the adaptability that you have to have in your bag.
Yeah, it's became another tool that like we need. And there's events that I've gone to and I've had absolute air on the right hand side, and I've backed it up and I've made the cut, or I've bowled well. So,
all right, let's see what you got.
Okay.
Future, when you go into these practice sessions, now you're going to practice from the right. Does it make the drilling of bowling balls different for you as well too?
No, not necessarily. Whenever I do go up the left-hand side or I'm backing it up, I predominantly am in like bigger symmetrical balls or urethane balls.
Okay.
It's rare that I'd be in a shiny ball or a cleaner ball on that side of the lane, just because based off there's not too much traffic there, so I don't feel like I'm not quite skilled enough yet at doing it where I can manipulate shiny balls on that side of the lane. I'll happily hold my hand up to that, but it is something that I've been working on too, going through a variation of balls, but I haven't been drilling new balls specifically for that. I've just been using the bigger balls with more surface, or else the urethane balls.
Makes sense. Yeah. Thanks SBI fans for tuning in. Chris, thanks for coming out. Great practice session today. A lot of focused in on a lot of good topics. We're the dual threat player now. And cheers, global, worldwide. Bowl up a storm. Thanks.